Welcome to BIV Today, the daily podcast from the newsroom of Business in Vancouver. I'm Kirk LaPointe, publisher and editor-in-chief. The pandemic, as we know, disrupted many activities, and one of them, somewhat strangely, was our charitable giving. It has hit a 20-year low in this country. But an area in which they haven't declined is in the field of donor-advised funds, in which there is a much more active role in how one's funds are used. One such fund, Charitable Impact, recently crossed the $1 billion mark in donations faster than any other Canadian fund has. And I want to talk today about why these types of funds have come into vogue with the CEO of Charitable Impact, John Bromley. He joins me now. Good to see you.
Hi, thanks for having me. Appreciate you taking interest in the topic.
Well, it is a fascinating topic because, I mean, very clearly Canadians got a little cold on the idea of charitable giving in the last couple of years, despite the fact that they could see more and more needs around. What do you ascribe that to?
Well, I describe it to two things, actually. One big thing is, where do you go to learn about charitable giving? The second thing I would describe it to is, if you are a donor, if you're interested in it, where do you go to get objective giving advice? I mean, where do you go to find someone who's really willing to work with you from where you're at, regardless of what charities you care about? I mean, most Canadians, and Canada is a pretty generous country. I mean, most Canadians who give when they're asked. Mm-hmm. And so the donor advised fund is a tool that's built for donors, and it helps meet them where they're at and helps them take them to where they want to go with their charitable giving.
Well, when you say it meets them where they're at, how so? How?
Well, at least with Charitable Impact, whether you're a big donor or a small donor, you can come in and you can establish your own donor advised fund, which is analogous to a bank account for charity. You can put your money in. You can then take the time and space you need to get really comfortable and confident with what charities you're going to, give that to. You can choose to maintain your anonymity if that's important to you, or you can share your name. And so what the donor advised fund does is it's really simply put, it's a tool built literally for the donor to help carry out their charitable giving. Not everyone who gives charitably necessarily needs to know everything about what they're going to do when they make the commitment to give. And the donor advised fund allows them to do that. Just say, look, I'm going to commit first to giving some money away as budget for charitable purposes, and then I'm going to choose my charitable, charities of choice later, for example.
So what do you think are the keys to this kind of success in an area where, it's a little harrowing to see what the numbers look like this year for Canadians and what their plans are? You've managed to find a sweet spot that keeps people giving.
Not to oversimplify it, but I think that when donors find a tool that's built for them, that can scale with the amount of money they want to give to, that gives them the flexibility to choose any registered charity to manage and control their anonymity, even gives them options, for example, to transfer money to other people for them to give away. I mean, I've got 2 kids and I give my kids a charitable allowance each month, and then they log into their own account and decide what charities to give it to. So I think the success is really about recognizing that there's nowhere for donors to go to get objective tools or service that help them with their charitable giving, regardless of how much money they give away, regardless of how experienced they are, or what charities they choose. And when you find that tool, what we actually find is that it helps engage people more deeply into charitable giving. They have a bit more fun with it.
I'm not asking you to give away your secrets here, but what do you think other entities can learn about why how to apply your successes to some of the things they do?
Well, that's a really good question. If I could back up one step, I think it's important for donors to recognize that there's 2 things that happen when they make a charitable gift in the traditional way. First, they decide to part with their money. And second, they choose the charity that they want to give the money to create the impact that they want to see in community. So what I think charities on the fundraising side really need to focus on is helping clarify for donors how good they are at creating impact, what specifically they do, right? And why they're good at carrying that out, so that donors feel confident with the choices that they're making. Confidence in the donor world is pretty shaky. And I think that's one of the major reasons why we've seen a reduction in charitable giving over the last decade in Canada. Fewer people giving money away, and the people who are giving money away are giving away less. And so we sit on the other side of that, right? We kind of act a little bit more like a charity bank, where we just say, well, look, we're not here to tell you what a good charity is. We're here to support you in that process of finding out, in that process of, parting with your charitable money, taking the tax receipt, and then, giving people tools, including the time and space they need to find those charities, which you can do through research online, talking to friends. There's lots of mechanisms to find out what good charities are. And there's a lot of very good, effective charities in Vancouver, let alone across Canada.
Yeah. Maybe a little bit off as a side topic here, but do you think that the attention given to the We charity soured some Canadians for a little while?
I think that's a great question. I don't have a clear answer for you. What I can tell you is that, like, when there's a lot of press given to something that is hard to understand and looks negative, that, it doesn't do much for Canadian confidence in charitable giving. We don't see a lot of, positive stories about, charity just because, charities run under the radar. They do so much work that goes unnoticed. So yeah, but I do think that those things cause confidence problems with donors. The question for Canada and for Canadian donors is that a reason to stop giving charitably, or is it a reason to start looking at other tools and how to educate yourself on how to prevent those? If it was a mistake to give to We Charity, yeah, I don't have a position on that, but if it was, then how do you go about learning from that and how to prevent those types of things in the future? We want donors to feel confident about how they go about their decision making. Not unlike, I guess, an investment manager would say, we want you to feel confident in how you make decisions about your investments.
Yeah. It sounds strange, but I wonder whether Canadians were just a little complacent, or have been a little complacent in parting with money on the assumption that it's going to be really well used, that there's going to be fantastic activities, that it's going to have a huge impact, and that their effort kind of stops when that check gets signed and posted or online gets transferred. Is one of the issues about charitable impact that it's kind of compelling donors to, frankly, mind their business properly, and get more active with what it is that they're doing in this space for their own good.
That's an absolutely wonderful observation. Saying back to you what I just heard, using some of my own language, and one of the things I'd like to see and engage in conversation with Canadians about is, like, when you make a decision to give to a charity and it doesn't turn out well, is that the charity's fault or is that our fault as donors? Right. And it's not a clear line necessarily, right? But your observation or comment or question that maybe, should Canadians take more ownership over those decisions? My answer to that is 100% yes. And secondly, for what it's worth, the Donor Advised Fund is the tool to help them do that. And frankly, it's why we started Charitable Impact as a donor advised fund, because there was nowhere for donors to go. So, when you make a bad decision in the stock market, is that the company's fault or is it your fault for doing that? Well, there's a complicated scenario there that should be looked at, diversification on all these things. But ultimately, it's on us as consumers to take responsibility for the decisions we make. And the more you do that, the easier it is to kind of look at a situation like We Charity and go, you know what, like, I actually totally believed in those guys. And, maybe I made some mistakes, or maybe I gave them a little bit more and I should have spread my charitable donations out across other things. The other thing that's important is you can learn from these things. Last but not least, when you engage at this level of, taking some personal accountability, taking responsibility, it's more fun and engaging, to be honest.
Yeah. And yet you're staying neutral in this system, if you want to call it that, right? You're not really providing people with a kind of batch of recommended charities, or who's most in need, or what can use the money most quickly and most of greatest impact. You're staying out of that. Was it somewhat tempting to get into that side of it, the actual advisory business in this one?
These are great questions. Yeah. Is it tempting? For me personally, it's not tempting, because my strengths are something closer to being a charity banker, right? Like the banks that we go to don't tell us what to do with our money, but they do give us the tools and support to make, informed decisions. So I personally have strengths there, and Charitable Impact has adopted that model. The second thing the question as to why. First of all, it's impossible to be a real professional, knowledgeable player on all the different causes in the charity sector. I mean, advancement of education in itself is massive. Relief of poverty in itself is massive. The advancement of religion in itself is massive. And those are 3 of the 4 charitable heads in Canada, right? So you can't be a pro at it all. But the really important point is, if you're there to serve the donor, you want to meet them where they're at, and everyone's intrinsic interests are different. Right. So like, I'm motivated to advance religion. Well, I'm motivated to advance to advance education. Those are 2 completely different donors who can be served by the same charity banking like infrastructure, but are necessarily going to be giving to different qualified donees or different recipient charities at the end of the day. And so it's, once you get in and you can appreciate the value of the donor and everything that they play a part of in the charitable ecosystem, it actually, you don't get too tempted. In fact, you get a little bit worried about going away and trying to tell them what a really good charity is. In the same way that I think stockbrokers don't like to tell you exactly, here's the one company that's going to succeed, and so put all your eggs in this basket, because it's just unlikely to happen that way. No one actually knows.
Yeah. One interesting aspect among many, and that I've noted with Charitable Impact, is that you actually can create an investment account on all of this, so that you basically, you have a certain sum of money, and maybe you're not necessarily going to rack up the amounts of funds and all of this, but you're going to be able, in a way, to see this money grow a little bit. How is that being applied through this system? Is there a straightforward fund of some sort that it attaches itself to and grows over the course of a year or 2 or 3 or however many years? Explain to me a little bit about how an investment fund of this type works.
What you just described is something we aspire to reach over the next couple of years. What you just described, as I heard it, was a place where if you have a little extra money in your donor advised fund, you can place it into a portfolio that we put forward, and hopefully that grows to create more assets for you to give away charitably later. Today, however, how we work is that people who make larger donations can come in and recommend an investment advisor to work with us with our investment guidelines to enable growth of the individual donor's portfolio. And as a result, the portfolio is tied to the donor's interests within our investment policy guidelines at Charitable Impact. And so why do we do that? There's a couple important points. One is that people already have existing relationships with wealth managers, and we don't want to get in the middle of that. Those are trusted relationships. Secondly, we don't aspire to be investment managers. We aspire to be, really good, charity bankers, to enable people to give their money away, effectively over time. And so we don't try to do anything more than what we're really, really good at. And what we actually find is that as more investment managers get involved helping their clients with their charitable giving, more money actually gets attracted to the sector. And so there's also a strategy there on behalf of the charity sector to try get more assets in, because when trusted advisors are talking to their clients about things that include charitable giving, it can also include retirement, more people participate. And so our goal is to work with as many different financial advisors as possible to empower them to help their clients with charitable giving, where we act as the foundation or what I'm referring to as something like a charity bank, right, where we act as the tool to manage those assets and to help the donor as liquidity is created in those assets to give that money away to the charities that they want to serve.
Last sort of area I want to explore, and it has to do with the last Canada Helps report, which I think is a pretty comprehensive report on donations and activities and behaviors, I guess, in that space. A couple of things are very worrisome. One is, of course, that in 2022, fewer people are saying they are going to donate than they did in 2021, and 2021 was probably less than 2020 and 2019. I mean, we were on a bit of a decline here. And then, of course, the other part of it is that about nearly 2/3 of all charities have a little bit of a confidence issue going on right now, and whether they can be sturdy and sustainable. So what I wonder about in this space here, is it time now to recognize that we've got a problem here, that this wasn't simply a creature of the pandemic, and that maybe we're into something a little bit more chronic and serious, and that maybe we need some policy shifts? What's your take on all of this?
Yeah, first of all, I don't think that the decline in charitable giving is related to COVID. You could argue that COVID accelerated it, but I don't think it's related to that. The decline in engagement with charitable giving, as measured by people, sending their tax receipts to as part of their tax returns, has been going on for pretty much 10 years or more, right? So this is a continual decline. Do I think it's time to start talking about it? Oh my goodness, yeah, absolutely, 100%. In fact, it's getting to be too late. Do I think policy change? I don't think that policy is going to help here. You can't politicize people into becoming charitable. Mm-hmm. What can you do? You can educate. Okay, so generosity is part of our nature, but knowing how to give charitably is not. So how do you take generosity, which is ultimately about helping create change in the world and the community around you, and use charitable giving to create those ends? That's about education. I mean, I can go to school and learn math. I can go out into the community and find a soccer team to play for and learn about that. There's really nowhere you can go to learn more about charitable giving. There's nowhere really to go, with a few exceptions, to be modeled in, to see modeling of charitable giving or to experience it on your own, regardless of what charities you choose. So I think one of the major problems here, Kirk, is that charities themselves who carry out the activities on the ground are really about fundraising for themselves. And so while they benefit when there's a ton more donors in the space, their focus is on, how do I make the experience best for a donor to give to us? Charitable Impact is looking at it the other way, and it's sort of saying, how do we create an enabling environment for more donors to get engaged in giving, regardless of where they give to? And so our focus is on making the donation experience as good as possible for the donor, regardless of what charities they give to. And my personal hypothesis is that will lead to more engagement. And when there's more engagement, there will be more money. And then charities will have less of a sustainability problem, particularly the charities who are able to validate the impact that they make on the causes that they care for on the ground.
I wonder if this were Amazon I was talking to in this space, whether there wouldn't be a recommendation engine very quickly emerging, right? Are you going to steer clear of a recommendation engine, or so you give to advanced education? Here's some ideas you might have, you might want to explore.
No, we won't steer clear of that, Kirk. That's a great question. We won't steer clear of that. I'll come back to that. Tell you what, we will probably steer clear, at least as so long as I'm CEO, is sort of the Google ads, where a charity can come and pay us a bunch of money to get their charity at the top. I think we'll steer clear of that, even though we could monetize there. But we won't steer clear of a recommendation engine because we do believe that when that discovering new charities is a big problem for donors, right? Did you know that huge amount, 75, 80% of the money that's given away every year goes to 1% of charities. So is that because 99% of charities are bad or crap, and 1% are just super effective? Or is it because 1% are really effective at fundraising? My hypothesis is that 1% are really good at fundraising. And so donors aren't actually exposed easily to all the different, charities that are local in their neighborhood, that take care and solve problems that they care about. And discovery engines can help that. The problem with discovery engines is, where do you get the data from? I won't belabor that, and maybe there's some trade secrets there, although this is about public good, so those should be shared. But the complexity with the discovery engine is how to get the data into the machine to learn, so that recommendations that are sent to the donor are good.
Well, sure, because criteria are subjective, right? And what matters to me in a charity may be very different than what matters to the next person, and yet the data will be telling us the same thing.
Not necessarily, because it's a donor advised fund. So and we're entirely built on technology and have been since day one. So we can say, hey, Kirk, here's the charities that seem to matter to you because of maybe these gifts that you've made in the past. And I'm a donor and I use Charitable Impact. I can be told something different because of how I distribute. Furthermore, as I start inputting data into the system about telling the system what I care about, my answers are likely to be different from yours. And so the discovery engine isn't for everyone. The discovery engine isn't one discovery vehicle for everyone using Charitable Impact. It's actually custom to your own account and how you use it. And the other innovations, by the way, that can come from that, I shouldn't call them innovations because it's just obvious, is that like now you and I might determine that we both care about helping kids go to school in Vancouver, on a full stomach, and other people care about those same things, and we can come together as a group, whether we know each other or not, and advocate more clearly for that, raise money more, for it together, and help each other understand what are the most effective charities. So I think there's a big social connection, social network that will evolve out of charitable giving when there's a space for donors to play together, and not just a space for donors to give to an individual charity and then find the next individual charity and then find the next individual charity, and so on and so forth.
Yeah. I'm not a massive donor. I do what I can, but I am always intrigued on who else is finding this charity in the way that I am, and what do I need to learn about that, and all that. Last area, I think people would be curious, like the business model for Charitable Impact. Where are you making your money? Where's what's it coming from in all of this?
Yeah, great. Thank you. So for people who have charitable investment accounts, we charge them fees. Right. And so we make money there. Now, the benefit to them is that as their assets go up in value, their account has more money to give away, right? So they benefit from the return on investment, and we charge them a fee. For our non-investment account, what we call our impact account, which like a savings or checking account, okay, it's your cash account. Everyone at Charitable Impact has one. We actually don't charge you money there.
Yeah, it's free. Yeah.
It's free, but but cash can sit in the system, and we keep the return on investment from that money. Right now, that's managed very principally protected, and it's safe. And so why do we do that? The reason we do that is because what we know is that when you go into the world, and particularly like relatively uneducated donation populace, and you start to say like, hey, like let's charge you a bunch of money to use this thing. The idea of charging money in charity is just, it's like oil and water, right? It's no one likes that. So it's a really missional thing for us to make the donor advised fund free and accessible to every Canadian who wants to be a donor. Mm-hmm. And so our focus on making money is in areas where we really add value, more obvious value, I should say, to the donor. I mean, we add a ton of value to anyone who has an impact account, but we don't want to get into the battle about charging money there because it works against engagement with charitable giving. And our mission is to increase engagement with charitable giving.
Yeah. Okay. Well explained. Well, John, it's a fascinating conversation. Congratulations on getting past that $1 billion mark. That's a real milestone. And I want to thank you for your time today. It's been good talking to you.
Thank you. Those are excellent questions. Appreciate your time as well.
John Bromley is the CEO of Charitable Impact. I'm Kirk LaPointe, publisher and editor-in-chief at BIV. Thanks a lot for watching. See you again.